Senator from North Carolina.
Madam President, before the senator from Oklahoma leaves, I was wondering if he would yield for a question.
Yes, I would.
Senator Lankford, you've done an extraordinary job of negotiating what I think is going to be a successful compromise that's going to get support from Republicans and Democrats. But as you were going through this work and the years that you've spent studying this issue as a ranking member and chair in a committee of jurisdiction, I've got to believe you've looked at, let's say, Canada, for example. There are a lot of people that think what Senator Lankford and those of us who are trying to support Senator Lankford are being draconian and being out of step with the Western world. But Senator Lankford, could you just briefly describe how what we're trying to do compares to, say, our partner to the north, Canada, their laws?
I don't run into many people that call the Canadians extreme. Not a derogatory statement towards the Canadians, but they have a pretty consistent system on it. If you cross from the United States into Canada and ask for asylum, they would first ask you, did you cross through the United States of America before you came into Canada? And if your answer was yes, they would turn you around and immediately return you back to the United States. And to say you can't request asylum here in Canada if you haven't requested asylum in the places you've already traveled through. That's the law in Canada.
So, Madam President, may I ask one follow-up?
Senator from North Carolina.
So, Senator Lankford, isn't it true that tens of thousands of people who cross our borders today have not taken and who may ultimately request asylum, have looked past an opportunity to safely relocate in the country they're seeking asylum from, likely transited to another country where they could have declared of asylum, and in some cases passed through 4 or 5 or 6 different safe jurisdictions before they make the dangerous trip through Mexico, cross the Rio Grande border, and present themselves to border. Is that an accurate assessment of what hundreds of thousands of people have done during the Trump administration?
Senator Tillis, that is correct, that during the past several administrations, we have millions of people that have actually crossed across our border, have either never requested asylum. At the border, they declared they were going to ask for asylum, but literally never did, never filled out the paperwork, never even tried because they knew they weren't eligible, or they traveled through multiple countries on the way, never requested asylum because they wanted to come to America, which I don't blame them. It's the greatest country in the world, but that's not what asylum is. Asylum means I have fear in my entire country. There is no safe place in my country, so I fled to the next safe place. That's what the international definition of asylum is.
Well, I thank Senator Lankford through the chair, and then Madam President, I want to spend a few minutes on this subject as well. This is, we're reaching a milestone that I think is critically important. Since President Biden has entered office, the number of encounters at the border, 8 million. 8 million since President Biden entered office. That population exceeds the population of 30 U.S. states, the population of 30 individual U.S. states. That's the number we're talking about here. And ladies and gentlemen, a lot of them are the people that we just described. Of course, the United States wants to be a haven for people who are suffering, fearing for their life, suffering from oppression. But the goal of asylum is to get them immediately out of that dangerous situation, not to suddenly decide that I want to go through 2 or 3 or 4 other jurisdictions, because what I ultimately want to do is get to the United States. They are demeaning and devaluing the concept of asylum, and the problem is they're getting those who want to come here, and we should take it as a compliment that they want to come to the United States, but they're elbowing out and sapping the capacity for the United States to make absolutely certain that people who have a legitimate case for asylum are even being heard. I wonder about how many thousands of people who desperately need to get to the United States, it's their only option, are not getting there because we're focused on this population. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got to do something. This is dangerous. And you know, for a time, conservatives were really in the wilderness, being viewed as inhuman, insensitive, saying that we have to have an orderly border process. I've been saying that. I'm also somebody who thinks that we should probably legally immigrate another 250,000, 500,000 more than we do already. We immigrate about 1 million. Let me tell you the other problem we have here that's inherently unfair. I already talked about people who legitimately should be given asylum, probably not, because we don't know who they are. We're dealing with a flood of 300,000 in the month of December alone. Of course, there are going to be collateral damage in the form of people who want asylum. But now the American people are waking up to it. You know, there was a time when it was purely a shirts and skins, blue jersey Democrat, red jersey Republican argument. It's not the case anymore. The American people expect this administration to do something. And I'm glad. And I'm also glad that we have James Lankford at the tip of the spear negotiating on behalf of Republicans. He's negotiated. I'm a part of the working group. I've seen progress. He's negotiated something that I think is important. We cannot miss this opportunity. The stakes are too high. And the American people agree. Nearly half of those who responded to this poll, which was an even distribution ideologically speaking, nearly half of them think we have an emergency at the border. They're right. I've been there several times. They are right. People are dying. Cartels are making nearly $1 billion a year charging tolls to come across the border. And if you try to cross the border without an armband or recognition that you paid a cartel, you are likely going to die. Or you're going to get one more chance before you get beaten up. That happens every day at the border, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not exaggerating. I've been there. I've seen it. I've heard the stories. Fortunately now, we have a majority of Americans that expect this administration to come to the table and negotiate in good faith with conservatives and people like me who have negotiated several bipartisan deals to solve this problem. And if any Democrats are concerned with how far the negotiations are going, I don't think that they need to. This is not a political loser for people who are concerned with voting on a bipartisan compromise. In fact, it's politically smart. So at the end of the day, I hope political advisors and everybody that's up for election next year know, you know what, you don't even need political courage to do the right thing here, because the good policy of border security is also good politics for the overwhelming majority of people that need to vote for this bill. Now, we're going to have 30 or 40 people on this side, or not 30 or 40, I think we'll probably have 25 or 30 members in this body that won't vote for it. Some will be because it didn't go too far. The others will be it didn't go far enough. Some of them are because they're in cycle. It's very difficult to explain. I get that. But we need about 70 votes coming out of this chamber to create the momentum to get it done in the House. And I'm going to be one of those 70 votes. But I also want the American people to not only wake up to the reality that people are abusing our system, they're taking our attention away from people that we should desperately find a path to getting to the United States. And they're also jumping line. And that's what I'll leave with you. How angry do you all get? Any of y'all, I love going to a good sporting event or a good comedy show. You get there early sometimes because you want to get a good seat if it's general admission. How angry do you get if you're standing in line for hours and all of a sudden somebody jumps in front of you? Well, imagine if you've been waiting years, more than a decade, to legally follow the process to be one of those million people a year that get citizenship. When you see millions of them coming across the border every year breaking line. These people that are working hard, obeying our laws, respecting it, doing it by the book, they're breaking line. And it's actually elongating the time for them to get into this country. It's unfair at every level, and it's unsafe. And the only people who are loving the stalemate that we have in this nation today are the cartels, who are charging from $5,000 to $50,000 a person to get you across the border. Not everybody has $5,000 though. So you know what they do? They say, well, you don't have to pay, but once you get across the border, you're going to participate in criminal enterprises until we think your debt is done. That's not an exaggeration either. Talk to law enforcement, talk to people in these communities. These cartels are like a cancer metastasizing through illegally present communities, exploiting them and causing some people who may not have had a criminal record in the country of their origin to become criminals here. There are a million different reasons why we need to get this border compromise done. And Madam President, I hope this Congress is the Congress where people set aside politics, do the right thing, make this country safer, and show respect for people trying to come to this country legally by making sure that their place in line is reserved. Thank you, Madam President.